This is Michael Popok, Legal AF. Does it matter to the electorate whether Donald Trump is a convicted criminal at the time that he is up for election in November? If the trial that Jack Smith special counsel is working so hard to keep on its rails, keep on track for March happens, and Donald Trump is convicted, will the voters in the battleground states punish him by not voting for him, by votes being shed from Donald Trump's tally, and in effect, Joe Biden being rewarded for not being a criminally convicted presidential candidate? That is on everybody's mind. We've talked about it a lot on Legal AF because we sit at that intersection of law, politics, and justice, and I've questioned numerous times, if Donald Trump is convicted, what will be the impact on the electorate? Can even the GOP, the Republicans, the non-Trump MAGA Republicans bring themselves to vote for a convicted criminal or not? I know there's a lot of attempt by the Republican Party, a lot of whataboutism, a lot of trying to conflate issues, use the attempted impeachment of Joe Biden because of what his son has done, Hunter Biden, in an effort to try to balance the scale. But the scales aren't balanced in the court of law, because Donald Trump is standing trial based on evidence that's on one side of the scale and nothing else on the other side of the scale in terms of whether he's going to be convicted or not. It's going to be up to a jury to decide that, not what James Comer says, not what the Speaker of the House says, not what the impeachment proceedings against effectively Hunter Biden say, but what is the evidence that's presented in a court of law by a tenacious and well-armed prosecutorial team against Donald Trump's outmatched and outthought legal team. That's all that's going to happen. And the question that's been posited by people, including somebody like Norm Eisen, who is he's a constitutional scholar and formerly a lawyer for the House managers for the impeachment proceeding. He's written in the New York Times, along with some pollsters, that it has a real impact, and it should, on the electorate voting for the president if Donald Trump is convicted in advance. We've always wondered what would happen. I'm focused on justice. If the evidence is as overwhelming as we believe it is from following it closely for the last 2 years, including filings with the court system, then Donald Trump is going to be convicted as soon as this trial gets up and running. Sure, there are issues that still have to be considered ultimately by the United States Supreme Court about whether Donald Trump has presidential immunity effectively to commit crimes while he was in office or not. That is going to be decided very, very quickly, probably before the month of January, early February is over. And that trial is going to continue in March if the rulings come out the way that we think they will. But the question here that I'm focused on, the thrust of this hot take, is, does it matter? Yes, Trump would go to jail effectively, but does it matter to voters one way or the other in tipping the balance towards one candidate or the other? You would think it would. It would be counterintuitive, I believe, to think that Donald Trump could go through a criminal trial, be convicted, and it would have no impact on the electorate. We focus a lot on MAGA. Look, I get it. Everybody wearing, red from head to toe at every rally, whenever they're interviewed in the parking lot, they make statements that suggest that it doesn't matter what Donald Trump does, they're going to vote for him. And there is a group that's going to do that. Could be as high as 40 or 45% of the electorate is going to look past Donald Trump's moral failings and his criminality and vote for him. But what about the rest of the electorate? And so what the polling that's been observed by people like Norm Eisen, as reported in the New York Times, it has a real world impact. They think, based on polling, that at least in the non-battleground states, the non-swing states, if Trump is convicted, it's a 7-point advantage to Biden. In other words, it swings 7 points to Biden's advantage. Meaning in every poll that you've heard where Biden, a year away from the election, is behind in the poll in major battleground states, he would be ahead in the poll if you factor in a conviction. That includes Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, and Nevada, where Biden is a little behind. I put that in quotes because we're a year away. lots of presidents that win are behind in a lot of different states in polling, because until you have to go in and actually, pull that lever for somebody that may be a convicted criminal, you can say what you want to a pollster. So you got a 5 to 7 point swing, but it's even more dramatic, the polling that's been identified in the battleground states, because in the battleground states, people are more in flux, voters are more in flux. And the polling shows it's a 14-point swing to Biden if Trump is convicted. Now, this is not, let me just put something out on the table right away. This is not a support for the conspiracy theory that the Biden Department of Justice is going after Trump, not because of his criminality and the weight of the evidence that could not be ignored, but because they want to help Joe Biden win the election. These are two completely separate in the Venn diagram, there's no overlap, okay? I'm just giving the reality of the conviction. I'm not promoting that he should be convicted in order to cause a 14-point swing in favor of Joe Biden. I'm just reporting the facts that based on polling, that would happen. Real talk. 52% of men over 40 experience some form of ED between the ages of 40 and 70. Personally, all of my friends, once they hit 40, started using something to help, whether they admitted it in the locker room or not, because it's always been a taboo topic. Thankfully, HIMSS is changing that by providing affordable access to ED treatment all online. HIMSS is changing men's healthcare by providing access to affordable and discreet sexual health treatments, all from the comfort of your couch. HIMSS provides access to clinically proven generic alternatives to Viagra and Cialis, up to 95% cheaper, with options as low as $2 per dose. The process is simple and 100% online, no uncomfortable doctor's visits. Answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you for free and in discreet packaging. No insurance needed. Pay one low price for your treatments, online visits, ongoing shipments, and provider messaging. HIMSS has hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, so if ED is getting you down, it's time to change that. Start your free online visit today at hims.com/legalaf. That's HIMS.com/legalaf for your personalized ED treatment options. hims.com/legalaf. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription. So you have two groups that are driving that 14-point swing or 14-point shedding of votes in favor of Donald Trump if he's convicted. One is independent voters that seem to be sort of on the fence and still slightly leaning towards Trump at this moment, which is still mind-boggling to me, and young voters. That's the driver for the 14-point differential if Trump is convicted. And that's in all the battleground states. I mean, the polling right now, 2 or 3 interesting data points that are out there right now, which is what we have. We've got two things. We've got the reality of all the indictments and trials and civil fraud cases and Colorado Supreme Court cases finding Donald Trump to be an insurrectionist and engaged in rebellion. Got that. But then we've got the polling, right? Which is not facts, but it's data. It's data. 62% of Americans believe that if Trump is convicted, he can't serve as president. He can't sit in prison or in home confinement and be the president of the United States. And even within that 62%, 31% of even the Republicans agree to that. So a third of Republicans effectively believe that if Trump's convicted, he can't be president. Okay? Two-thirds of people that are polled think that Trump should get a significant prison sentence if he's convicted. And 50% of the Republicans believe that as well. Why? Because that's for me, of all the stats that I'm going to talk about on this hot take, that's the most outstanding one. That if they get convicted, then the weight of public opinion swings totally against Trump and says, and send that rascal, send that bastard into a prison for a long, long time. Why? Because we've always talked about, even though voting is not mentioned in the Constitution in that way as a right. It is the primary right in our constitutional republic that people believe is important. There's a reason that we send Jimmy Carter used to go into different countries as election watchers and observers, because without voting, you only have despotism. You only have fascism. You only have, dictatorships. You have to start with the vote. The vote, right, is the initial beginning molecule of democracy. And people feel that way in this country. And if their vote is effed with, to paraphrase the title of our show, or AF'd with, Americans get very upset, as they should. Lovers of democracy get very upset when voting rights, particularly among all other rights, are being infringed, impaired, suppressed in any way. And if Donald Trump is convicted of doing that, then the pendulum doesn't swing, the axe or guillotine swings for the American people. And Donald Trump, they believe, should spend a long time in prison as a result of it. And that's the tension that we're watching in American society right now. The tension between the priority that Americans put in voting as a fundamental right to be exercised, and if it's proven that that's been infringed, against our belief in a justice system, in a jury system, in people being innocent until proven guilty, but then once guilty, that they obtain the punishment that they deserve, that the punishment fit the crime. And so the American people are poised, as we expected, to, and it looks like most of MAGA, of course, to believe that Donald Trump is innocent until proven guilty, and I'm fine with that. That is the foundation of our system. And I don't want his case tried in the public domain. I don't want his case tried on the courthouse steps, at rallies, social media, right-wing media interviews. That's not where you try a case in the public. Try a case in the public inside the wood-paneled walls of a courtroom with a judge and a jury and rules and constitutional principles and due process. That's where it happens. And so I'm fine with that. But then the American people are saying, once there is a conviction through that process that we love and cling to and want to see preserved, then bring justice. Then bring justice. And if Donald Trump, I know there's all these posits because I think the media finds it interesting. Well, Donald Trump could be president from prison. American people say that's not possible. That's not possible because they're not going to vote for somebody in the large enough quantities to make them president if they are convicted. So we never have to, it makes for great, fiction, barely science fiction about America in some year where the president is sitting in jail and serving as president. But the American people aren't going to let that happen. And that's what the polling says when 62% say that if Trump's convicted, he should be, sent up the river without a paddle, as they say. And a third of Republicans agree with that as well. And 2/3 think he should get significant time in jail for his crimes. And even 50% of the GOP believes that as well. So we'll continue to follow on our Legal AF podcast at the intersection of law, politics, and justice, exactly this tension in American society between people that try to suppress voting rights while having the presumption of innocence, and then what happens, including to Donald Trump and the electorate, if he is convicted. I'm not here to promote that the trial happened in March to help Joe Biden. The trial in March is not against Joe Biden or for Joe Biden or being brought because of Joe Biden. It's being brought because of Donald Trump and his alleged criminality and those around him as well, just as Georgia is too. I mean, the lens, the deficit lens that Donald Trump is being viewed through includes the 91 felony counts in 3 states, the civil fraud case that says that his, if it's proven this way, that his entire business empire has been nothing but a persistent fraud under New York law in which he's benefited to the tune of billions of dollars. The E. Jean Carroll defamation and sexual abuse and rape case, where he's already been adjudged to be a rapist and having defamed E. Jean Carroll. And we're going to do it all again in January as her second trial goes forward, including for punitive damages. On the tail of what would just happen to Rudy Giuliani with his $148 million judgment against him for doing something similar to 2 election workers in Georgia. And then the Colorado case, where 9 judges in Colorado, all 9, thought that Donald Trump engaged in insurrection or rebellion against the Constitution under the 14th Amendment. It's just that 3 of the 9 who are on the Colorado Supreme Court thought that the issue of whether he should be on the ballot or not, because of that, should be in the hands of Congress, or he should be criminally convicted of such a count before he's removed from the ballot. But they all agreed he did it. They all agreed with the lower court's decision-making related to that. So this is the deficit lens through which the electorate is looking at Donald Trump. People talk about Teflon Don like he's, like John Gotti or whatever. I don't know about Teflon Don. 91 felony counts, civil fraud case to take away your business empire, being adjudged a rapist, all in the last year, does not spell Teflon to me, right? We just then have to watch the criminal process run its course through a jury. Right now we're watching judges, groaning under the strain of Donald Trump. Wait till it gets to a jury for them to decide just based on the evidence and the law that's being presented to them. We'll follow it on Legal AF at the intersection of law, politics, and justice on the MeidasTouch Network, Wednesdays and Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. Give me a thumbs up for this particular hot take. Keeps me on the air. Until my next hot take, until my next Legal AF, this is Michael Popok reporting.
Thanks so much for watching. We're only a few subscribers short of 2 million subs. Please subscribe right now to the MeidasTouch YouTube channel for free and help us grow this unapologetically pro-democracy network.